guys, welcome to the Homestead. So today we're going to talk about the places that you do not want to build a homestead. Have been, over the years of me doing this, I have encountered a lot of families who have been to a lot of places, who have come from a lot of places, and you hear their stories. And I even do consults with a number of families and homesteads around the country, virtual consults, and we talk about their problems. And there's a number of places that keep coming up where homesteaders find it more challenging to build a homestead. And so that's why in this video, I'm going to give you the 5 places where I think you ought not build a homestead, just for your own sanity's purpose. I want you to succeed. I want you to do well. I want you to achieve goals. And the way you're going to do that is to limit the amount of obstacles in your path as much as possible. And one of the obstacles you can eliminate is not building in a place where people didn't normally live. 100 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. There's been a lot of inventions in the last number of years that have changed things, that have allowed people to move out to these places and live successfully. But what if all that was taken away? What if you were just going to homestead in a more traditional way, or if you had eyes to see and ears to hear, saw the world around you and said, you know what, maybe we ought to prepare for harder times. How can we do that? Let's take a look at the 5 places where I would suggest not building a homestead. Now, this is just my opinion. You can disagree with me in the comments. I'm just going by my experiences of talking to other homesteaders and seeing the challenges that they have come across. So, number 1, and this is the one that comes up probably the most, that is the desert. Don't build homesteads in the desert. People didn't normally live in the desert. It's a desert. Nothing grows there. Why? Because there is no rain. You have no water. And it's only because of modern conveniences that you have these pipelines of water that come through these places, Las Vegas being a prime example, that allow people to live there, flourish there, grow there. But if that was taken away tomorrow, if that pipeline was shut off, there is no water. You're going to die, and everyone else around you is also going to die. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I have encountered a number of homesteaders who have moved out to where we are, who used to live out there in those deserts. And it's like, yeah, we tried it and we did okay, but we all, one day we thought, what if the water was turned off? How would we, grow our fruit trees? How would we water our animals? How would we grow our gardens? How would we do just normal day-to-day things like canning? Because all of that requires water. Living life day-to-day, showers and keeping things clean. All of this requires water. How would we do it? You wouldn't do it. You'd die. That's what you would do. You'd die. So they came to that realization and said, you know what? Maybe we ought to move out from there. And I encounter a lot of them here. Understand that people didn't live at these places without, number 1, piped-in water pipelines, and then also air conditioning. It's hard to live in a desert, which is why most people historically, traditionally, did not live there. You come to your own conclusions in the time frame that you have set up, and you'll probably come to the same conclusion that I have and others. All right, what's the second place? Second place is cities. Now, I know we live in a world where you can define anything however you want. We take words that used to mean this, and then we can redefine it to mean that. And there are people who live in the suburbs, who live in the cities, and they want to call themselves homesteaders. And I get it. You can do a lot of homesteading things inside the city, inside the suburbs. But I really wouldn't call yourselves homesteaders. I always often tell people when I go to conferences, when I give speeches on things like this, me and my late wife, Jamie, we often practiced a lot of homesteading stuff while living in an apartment in St. Louis. She practiced canning green beans or doing some things like that, and cooking and doing different recipes that would require raw food ingredients that we might get from our garden. And so we had some of those skills as a base when we moved and made that jump off grid. And that's a good thing to do. I encourage people to do that. But if you have a homestead in a city or in a suburb and you are putting in a garden, maybe you have a few chickens, don't call yourself a homesteader. You're not homesteading yet. So here's main reasons why I don't call homesteaders who live in the city. And that, number one, is animals. You're limited to the kind of animals you can have. It doesn't matter what you want. Your city, your town's going to have ordinances and zoning and all these things that's going to prevent you from having the animals that you might be able to grow otherwise in a different place to be sustainable. You just won't be able to do that. Okay, no matter how you look at it, unless you're really good about hiding things and don't mind getting in trouble when they do eventually come to light because your neighbors can smell all of the manure they're producing. You're not a homesteader. Okay, so then you have gardens. Even in a lot of cities, we've done videos before on this in the past, there are a lot of cities, towns that are passing ordinances and zoning on what kind of gardens you can have, how big your gardens can be, even some of the things you can grow in them. So be aware that there are many places in the suburbs where you're going to be limited on gardens. And when you live on a homestead, when you live out in a more rural piece of property, in a more rural community, you're not going to have those issues normally. You can still have HOAs and zoning in those places, but it's going to be far, far fewer of an issue that you're going to deal with. Then the next one is fruit trees. I have done videos before on this in the past. There are zoning and regulations put forth by towns and cities on the kind of fruit trees or how many fruit trees you can have. It's ridiculous that there would be some ordinance or some town council member who's going to regulate the kind of tree you can grow in your yard, but it does happen. And so that's something that you, in a more rural setting, could do without worry or fear of a government intrusion. And then the last one is, and this is the big one, it's HOA. The Homeowners Association, the Karen who loves to put her business, make your business her business, and then make her business your business and say, hey, whatever you're doing here, you can't do that because I said so. And we're going to come out with a measuring tape and measure your grass. So you can't grow it longer than this amount. And if you do, you're going to be fined for it. And how dare you have a chicken? These homeowners associations kill homesteading. You cannot live, I'm sorry, in my opinion. I mean, you could probably live in an HOA that was very lax. But the reality is, what if some Karen comes in and now she wants to enact all these rules and you have now encroachment by this government entity who's overseeing your community, and what was once laxed is now very much a burden. So HOAs. If you live in a city in the suburbs, don't call yourself a homesteader. Don't homestead in these places. If you want to have this lifestyle, move into a more rural area. All right, third one. And we'll go through some of these other ones here a lot more quickly. Swamps, Florida being the main one, but swamps in general. Swamps, your number one problem. Number one, you have bad soil in the swamps, but you can make any soil good soil. And that goes with cities and even deserts. Given enough time with animals, you can make any soil good soil. But in swamps, you have bad soil, so you're going to have that issue. But the number one thing you're going to deal with when it comes to swamps is disease. When you have standing water, you have the mosquito. And the mosquito, ladies and gentlemen, is the world's most deadliest animal. Nothing has killed more people than that insect. Look it up. Do your own research. Starvation, war, all kinds of things. Nothing comes close to the mosquito. And when you have a swamp, you're going to have the mosquito, which is why Daniel Boone, when he went down to Florida to see if it might be a place he might want to live, he came back and said, oh, hells no. This is not going to happen. Malaria was rampant. It's always been rampant down there. The state of Florida spends over $100 million every year on spraying and mosquito control. That's just the state. That's not talking about private entities like Disney that also spend millions of dollars because when you go to Disney, it's all about an experience. They want you to have an experience when you go to Disney, and the experience does not include encounters with a mosquito. Do you know how much chemicals they spray on the Disney parks in order for you to not have the encounter with a mosquito? I've done videos before on this in the past. So if all of that stopped tomorrow and the world goes sideways and they stop spraying for mosquitoes, you have an awful lot of people who have no immunity to malaria who live down there at that point, and most of them are going to die. Most of them are going to die. It's not me. It's just world history. You can look it up. They're going to die, and you might be one of them. Now, that's it for swamps. That's the main thing for swamps. Next one is number 4 is going to be high mountains. And I've consulted people who live up in Denver, in the Colorado Rockies and some other places too. In the high mountains, you have water issues, number one. It's hard to get down to water, have wells. Some people are lucky, they have high water tables, but that's rare. But it does happen. And you have the temps, the extreme winters. You're going to have a hard time, dealing with that. And then soil. Soil is not very good. But again, like I said before, on the other places, over time, you can make any soil good soil. Okay, it just takes time and it takes resources, and searching out those resources, whether it be animal manures or plant waste products or things like that you can get usually for free many times, and then put that on there. But it's going to be a struggle. And that's what I have seen over and over again from people and consults and other homesteaders who have lived in more higher altitudes and Rocky Mountains and things like that they struggle with. It's a tough row to hoe. And it can be a challenge. So if you're up to that challenge, fine, but just know that it's not going to be as easy, and you're going to face a number of roadblocks along your way. The fifth one is this one. It's northern latitudes, and this one is it's not as bad as swamps or deserts. But you're going to have and I have met lots of people who have lived up north, and they're still doing okay up north, but they do face a lot of significant challenges. And number one is going to be the growing season. You're going to have a far less length of a growing season than other people who live in southern latitudes are going to have, which is going to limit the amount of things or the kinds of things that you can grow. And so, you have to take that into account. They grow a lot of things up there very, very well, but there's lots of things that they can't. If you live up in like northern Minnesota and northern Michigan and northern Wisconsin, unless you have a greenhouse and unless you have some sort of modern technology to help you, like electricity, goodbye tomatoes. And you can tell me I'm wrong in the comments below, but for the most part, the most people I talk to up there's a number of things they have a hard time growing on a regular, consistent basis: tomatoes, peppers, okra, things like that, things that are going to require warmer temperatures. So if you're okay with that, fine. If you want to eat cabbage year round, you're going to be great. But if you want like salsa, you got to move south, buddy. Move south. And then it's like also the animals. Another big challenge is the animals. I can't tell you how many stories every winter I hear about people up in the northern latitudes and their entire cattle herd freezes to death. Because they got caught out in a snowstorm. It came in, they couldn't get them in, or some of them refused to come in. They had shelter for them because you have to have shelter up there. And they die. And your cattle is gone and your livestock is gone. So you have to get livestock, number one, that's built, hardy for those locations. And number two, you have to have shelter for them. Okay. You got to have shelter for them. You got to have a way to get them in reliably. And then I hear lots of stories every year about people who get in a car wreck up there in the middle of a snowstorm and they die. It's hard living in the northern latitudes, which is why until, modern technologies came around in the last 100 years, a lot of people didn't live in the extreme northern latitudes. You had a few people who did, and they did okay, but they knew how to survive those regions. But if the world goes sideways and all that goes away tomorrow, the people are not going to know how to deal with it. And you're going to be stuck amongst a lot of people who are going to be panicking, and you never want to be in a place like that. So, which is why I recommend places that are much more friendly to homesteading. And there's a lot of people like in Appalachia and even in where I'm at in the Ozarks, and even just other places in other states that have much better soil, much better rainfall. They don't have to deal with mosquitoes all the time. The temperatures don't get too extreme, and they can have animals and fruit trees and gardens and have all these things flourish because all the things are kind of right where that allows people to grow. And which is why when you look back 200 years, guys, there's people living in certain areas, and then there's certain areas that are just people aren't, for the most part. I think history can be our guide in a lot of things. What do you think? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. If you disagree with me, I'm sure some of you do, go ahead and leave a comment below and tell me how wrong I am. And then if you do agree with me, go ahead and tell me how right I am as well. And if you have suggestions on how to get through some of these things. If you live in one of these places that I suggested and you have suggestions and how to deal with some of these issues when the world might go sideways, please leave a comment below. Leave your suggestion below. It might be your suggestion that saves someone's life in the future. As we all know, this world is a mess. It's an absolute disaster right now. All right, love you guys. See you next time on the Homestead. Bye! Have you ever gone to a health food store and seen all those small bottles of probiotics in your cooler section? Man, can they be pricey. Are you really getting all you need to improve your gut health from those expensive bottles? How viable are they? Most of those products claim to give you between 8 and 15 strains of gut-healthy healing bacteria. Think of each strain of bacteria as a different factory in your gut. Each factory is responsible for breaking down that food in its own way. The more factories you have, the more the food is broken down and the easier the food is absorbed and digested by the body. A 2018 study published by the National Library of Medicine shows that one fermented head of cabbage can produce up to 114 strains of beneficial bacteria. That's a lot more food factories than you're getting from that expensive pill bottle. And that's just cabbage. Imagine the probiotics when you add garlic, onions, pepper, and more to that ferment. PerfectPickler.com and its home fermentation kits provide you with everything you need to get started making your own gut-healthy food factories from the comfort of your own kitchen. PerfectPickler.com even provides a jam-packed recipe book with many of our kits. Visit PerfectPickler.com and start fermenting your own veggies to begin your journey to better gut health. That's PerfectPickler.com.
Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of an American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. I'll wait.